Eddie Crouch, but he has won the Referee of the Year award double-figure times. There's Travis Haslam, and we hope that Carolyn Gillespie, flying in from Adelaide, will be here around quarter time. We get underway from the AIS Arena. We saw the biggest ever wins on that Fast Facts page. Well, in fact, the last time Canberra played Wollongong here, it was their biggest ever win at home. Melvin Thomas took his eye off the ball, and it trundles out of court, and Canberra forced the error. That will boost their morale in the absence of CJ Bruton. And CJ, on behalf of everyone at Fox, we wish you a speedy recovery. Not a great time to have chickenpox. Not that it ever is a good time, but around Christmas he is doing it tough at the moment, and we wish you all the best. Here's George Banks getting to the hoop, and they can't prevent him from getting the opening score.
And a mental error right there by Wollongong. They might be able to get out of it. Inbounds play just took their eye off the basketball, almost made a turnover, eventually did.
Comes up with it. Now Dave Thomas has Rigby and Brad Williams in support. It's the latter who gets it. Now they slow it down, and they go to Cameron Rigby. He started the season against Wollongong with 20 points, and that remains his season high. Banks is going to have to do a lot of the offense, understandably, for the Canberra Cannons. When you consider that Banks averages 28 per game and Charles Thomas averages 15 to lead Wollongong, it gives you an idea of how important George Banks is going to be in terms of scoring points for Canberra. Excellent look inside, unable to finish it off from close range, Dave Thomas, and Wollongong catch a break. Here comes Glenn Saville, and reaching in, Dave Thomas relieves him of it, but just can't reel it in, and they'll need to keep good control of the ball here, because 4 of the top 7 in steals in the league are involved in this match. Campbell, good defensive job from Banks, forced him into a pass to Axel Dench. Now Dench against Rigby needs help. Touch pass from Campbell to Melvin Thomas, can't finish, but the foul is going to be called on George Banks. That's the first foul of the night.
Wollongong looked really shaky here in the early stages of the basketball game. They were very lucky not to turn that one over. Matt Campbell underestimated the defensive pressure and threw to the back of Axel Dench. He was lucky he got a bounce off of his shoulder to go their way.
George Banks didn't actually play in the first match between these teams. When they last met 6 weeks ago, he had 22 points and 15 boards to lead both categories. And already George Banks has the only score in the match, and now Melvin Thomas finally obliges for the Wollongong Hawks after 90 seconds there on the board. Dave Thomas showing Melvin Thomas some tricks. Charles Thomas joining in as well. That'll keep us busy tonight. George Banks from three-point territory. He is the man.
I think he realizes he's got to step it up offensively.
Matt Campbell couldn't find the target. Rigby had a piece of it, but Saville is with it now. Axel Dench back to Campbell, guarded by Dave Thomas. Dave Patrick giving away a lot of centimetres to Charles Thomas, and Dave Patrick starting for the first time in his NBL career. As close to the hoop, it's Melvin Thomas, the former Canberra Cannon, who gets their first field goal after some 2 minutes.
And boy, don't Wollongong do a good job of scrambling when you double team the guard on the on ball. Do a good job of locating those guys in the paint.
Pass from Thomas is batted out of court by Wollongong. Glenn Saville had last touch on it, according to Travis Haslam. Glenn Saville doesn't agree. Banks was another long-range attempt. 2 of 2 from long range. Banks now has 8 points in the game. The Hawks have 3.
That is a very tough cover for Axel Dench in the perimeter.
Ooh. Well, Eddie wanted you to be the referee, Steve. What are your thoughts there as Banks picks up his second?
Well, you know, with that many years of experience in the league, I don't want to just say anything until I see this. I'm just wondering how he made that call from the baseline back there. That looked pretty clean on the replay.
Charles Thomas back to Melvin Thomas. He's dumping the ball to Axel Dench, who wasn't on the same wavelength, and Wollongong have coughed it up again. 1 field goal and 3 turnovers is their tally at the moment. As Brad Williams goes to work on Glenn Saville. Here's Dave Thomas. Got Campbell going the wrong way initially, but Campbell came back hard and forced him into a tough shot. Now Charles Thomas harassed by Dave Patrick. Off to Glenn Saville. Dangerous in this situation. Decides to go early. It's unsuccessful. Banks had a piece of it. Can't reel it in though. It spills over the baseline, and Wollongong restart.
Good job that time by David Patrick, slowing the break down, and Charles Thomas to pick the basketball up.
Is Axel Dench rejected by George Banks. He's doing it all at the moment. He is a one-man wrecking crew, George Banks. Just give him the ball again, please. Brad Williams down to the baseline against Saville. Now coming back to the top of the key, showing Melvin Thomas some tricks. Pushes Saville out of the equation. It's an offensive foul has been assessed on Brad Williams.
This is a block shot from George Banks at the other end. It's a good jump, good timing. And I said on the other end of the floor, it's just a tough cover for Axel Dench, who's got to guard Banks, who's very comfortable out in the perimeter.
Cannons have committed 3 fouls already. Wollongong 0 as Saville gets to the baseline. Charles Thomas under pressure from Dave Thomas. Manufactured a good shot. Came up with the 2 under pressure.
Dave Thomas with those long arms made that a difficult play. Charles Thomas finishes it off.
Dave Patrick worked into trouble. Brad Williams had a piece of it, and reaching in, a foul has been assessed on the Wollongong Hawks. Matt Campbell was in the vicinity. Travis Haslam having trouble getting the number at the moment. But it is going to be called on Matt Campbell. That's his first and Wollongong's first after almost 4 minutes of action.
That's what David Patrick has to do. He has to be a constant threat with his penetration. He's not a real perimeter threat, but he has to keep the pressure on defense like he did on that last play.
Another whistle from Travis Haslam. Foul on this occasion has been assessed to Axel Dench. That's his first. Finished the season last year number 2 in the league from 3-point territory at 50% Axel Dench, and he's again number 2 in the league from that range so far this season. But 13 points last season has dissolved to 9 so far. He's had his problems with injury. Ben Pepper's injection to Wollongong has limited his minutes as well. Saville on the burst. They leave him all alone, and he helps himself to an easy 2.
Cal will be real happy with that. Poor transition defense. No one addressed when Saville is quite capable of going coast to coast.
Dave Patrick, very confident ball handler. Spent time with the Melbourne Tigers as well. Now Banks against Dench, firing from long range, and it's nothing but Cotton again. He's 3 of 3 from beyond the perimeter.
And those are deep ones too, Case. You really can't expect Axel Dench to get out that far. Another great block.
This time it's Dave Thomas who gets upstairs for the block. He is top 5 in the league in that category.
14.
Now a foul has been assessed to Cameron Rigby. It's Dave Thomas's block. Exciting stuff. And one of the underrated imports in the league so far this year, Dave Thomas, averages 13 points and 10 boards, which is top 5. He's second in steals, top 5 in blocks. I think if he was playing for one of the bigger franchises in a capital city, we'd be hearing a lot more about Dave Thomas. Don't underestimate his capabilities. He's been a great find for the Canberra Cannons.
It's like a new age import where you've got the talent of the Australian-born players so much better nowadays. You get your imports to come in and slot in nicely. And with numbers like that, I think he could slot into just about anybody's program.
Axel Dench gets a rest on the bench and a working over from the coach Brendan Joyce at the moment as well. Ben Pepper's checked in. He will try and guard Geordie Cullen, who's checked in for Cameron Rigby. Melvin Thomas has the job on Banks at the moment. Here's Dave Thomas working against Campbell. 7 on the shot clock for the Cannons. Cullen wheeling and dealing into the paint, rejected by Pepper. Good defensive play from Pepper. Just 3 seconds now on the shot clock for the Canberra Cannons.
And that's the presence of a shot blocker. It's going to be much more difficult for Canberra to finish plays off now with Ben Pepper in the game.
Cullen decides to go early, caught the back of the rim. Dave Thomas came up with the offensive rebound. Now Banks lighting it up from downtown. He's 4 of 4. This is some sort of display from George Banks. He now has 14 points, all of Canberra's score.
Brendan would be mad at Axel Dench for allowing George Banks to get in an early rhythm from the perimeter because there was all kind of pressure on him that time.
Another foul has been assessed on the Canberra Cannons. Geordie Cullen picks up his first. Cal Bruton is stamping his feet and doing a jig for us in front of the Cannons bench. He thought there was no indiscretion here, and on the replay, he's got a good case. I'm sure Geordie's 4 brothers and Kami Illawarra from Perth, one of his great mates who are watching our coverage in Perth, agree that that perhaps wasn't a foul.
Well, that's a tough thing, you know, because players are good at initiating the contact, like Ben Pepper, one of the better guys in the league, at getting forward progress and getting into the body and arms of defenders.
5-point ball game. Here's the man with 14 points, all of Canberra's score at the moment, to the baseline. Melvin Thomas did a good job, forced him into a tough one. Brad Williams is there with the offensive rebound. Cullen couldn't reel it in. Now Pepper goes to Charles Thomas. Melvin Thomas and Saville in support. Fans thought that Charles Thomas may have fouled Dave Patrick. That's not the way the two referees saw it. Now Cullen takes it from Dave Patrick. Surveys the options to Brad Williams. Against Melvin Thomas, they're both with the Sydney Kings at one stage. Pepper, another exciting block, but kept alive by the Canberra Cannons. 5 on the shot clock. They need to get something happening quickly. Dave Patrick was aware of the situation. Good work from the point guard, but no joy for him in terms of points. And now Glenn Saville does the ball carrying duties for Wollongong, and they want timeout, and not surprisingly. We played 6.5 minutes here, and George Banks has put on an individual display second to none so far this year. He has 14. Canberra has 14. They lead Wollongong by 5.
Wollongong with a very good start with CJ out of the lineup. I spoke to Cal before the game how he was going to go about his game plan without his franchise player.
Oh, pretty tough, you know, no doubt about it. He's the captain, the leader of the team. It all happened so quickly that we didn't get a chance to sort of get unprepared for it. He's not feeling too good. He's swollen. He's got chicken pox everywhere in his mouth, and as a result of that, he has to be very careful. So, you know, we've called on David Patrick to step up in the role. McHill, they'd be the 2-point guards for us in this game, and we feel comfortable that they'll be able to get the job done a little differently from the way CJ normally does it.
Well, he knows he's got a task, and I'm sure that he let George Banks in on a little secret. Say, I need some big numbers from you tonight, big fella, because he has come out on a mission. He's got 14 already, and 5 of 7 from the field, and perfect outside the arc at 4 of 4.
The bad sign for Canberra, though, Steve, is that Banks is 5 of 7. The rest of the team are none of 7.
Yeah, that could be a problem. And he better tighten and lace up his boots a little tighter. He's got some work to do if he doesn't get any more help than that.
Great start to the match from the undermanned Canberra Cannons, playing with only 8. They've done that a couple of times this year against Brisbane, and they stayed in the match for a very long time. In fact, led at three-quarter time before succumbing just by a couple of points. Here's Ben Pepper against Banks. Tough shot. Well, they had lost control of it. It was nowhere near the target, and Canberra come up with it. Of course, Banks has 2 fouls as well. That's why he didn't go at Ben Pepper on that occasion. He'll need to be circumspect, given that he is going to be such an offensive threat. Brad Williams guarded by Saville. Shot clock again into single numbers. Saville goes down. Banks is open for the shot. It jumped out of the cylinder. Saville has the rebound. Off and running. Harassed by Dave Patrick. Hands off to Charles Thomas. Now Saville gets it back. They post up Pepper again against Geordie Cullen. Pepper banging body. Short-armed it. Dave Thomas came up with the rebound. He's an exciting commodity, Dave Thomas. Top 10 in the league in rebounding. Now Banks gets a shove from Saville. He's going to take them all on. Made some room for the shot. Gets his own rebound. Back to work. May have been fouled. No whistle forthcoming. He adds another 2. Banks has 16 points here in 7.5 minutes of action. Lead out to 7. That's the biggest we've seen so far in the match. And another whistle provided by Eddie Crouch. Foul is going to be called on the Canberra Cannons.
Hands to the side. He was jumping off.
Okay, so you could look at it a couple of different ways. You could say, well, there's no way he's going to be able to score all their points and have them win. But you can say, well, once his team starts to help out, then they're going to be really forced to reckon with. But Wollongong, you got to figure that they're going to grind them down over 48 minutes and get a balanced attack, and it's just going to be too much for them. They need to start getting people to contribute.
Mick Hill's going to check into the game, replacing David Patrick. Melvin Thomas goes to the stripe. The Hawks are 3 of 6 from the foul line. The Cannons are yet to get there. We saw last night in Sydney a lopsided free throw scoreline where the Kings had 46 free throw attempts and Townsville just 19. Certainly was a major discussion point after the match. And I'm sure we might see it, perhaps not that lopsided, but of course Wollongong's inside-outside game does get them to the stripe a lot. Dave Thomas having trouble restarting here. Eventually Brad Williams presents himself. Banks Got time to measure that one against Ben Pepper, but it's off the mark. Geordie Cullen with the offensive rebound. He goes back to Banks, and why not? He adds another 2. He now has 18 in the quarter. His season best is 19 in a quarter, which came against Melbourne back in week 3. The NBL record this year is 20 in a quarter, held by Willie Farley in Perth on a match we covered here on Fox Sports recently. Ben Pepper. Good pass to Melvin Thomas. Banks tried to close him down, was slow in arriving. Cullen comes up with a rebound again. Well, in his return from injury, Geordie Cullen means business as well.
Well, he's a big body out there, and he has got to do his fair share on the board, especially when he's matched up with Pepper.
Dave Thomas guarded by Shanahan. Now Banks stepping away from Melvin Thomas. Caught the back of the rim. Pepper gets the rebound. And Charles Thomas leads the charge for the Wollongong Hawks. Saville, quick pass to Matt Shanahan. Now they work the ball back around the perimeter. Charles Thomas goes to Ben Pepper. Lob pass inside for Melvin Thomas. Dave Thomas did a good job, but can't prevent Melvin Thomas from adding another 2. 3 minutes to play, term number 1. It's a 6-point spread in favour of Canberra. Led exclusively as George Banks scored the first 14 of the game. In fact, he scored the first 18 of the game for Canberra. And they'll be looking for him again. Cullen down to the baseline in plenty of traffic. Melvin Thomas rejected the shot. Now Shanahan has Charles Thomas running for him, and Charles Thomas is fouled by Mick Hill. He'll have to earn these from the stripe as well. Wollongong about to inject Grant Kruger into the match as well. So I wouldn't say Brendan Joyce is pressing the panic button, but it's rare that we see Kruger and Shanahan into the game in the opening period.
18-12.
Well, Canberra has been very good on the defensive end of the floor. David Patrick, while he was in, was really slowing down the Wollongong break. I spoke to David Thomas before the game about his role on defense for the Canberra Cannons.
I think definitely. I mean, being brought up in the Michigan State environment and Michigan State kind of basketball in college, you know, defense was one of our biggest ways of why we won games. So I think for me to be here and you know, just showing my defensive abilities, hopefully, you know, it'll leak out and other guys will step it up as well, and maybe I can be somewhat of a leader on defense, and I take that with a lot of pride.
Well, Dave Thomas from that good stock at Michigan State University in Lansing, Michigan. Of course, the former school of Magic Johnson, Steve Smith, who was out here during the Olympic Games representing the USA. And they just recently won the NCAA championship. So, of course, he's got plenty of good things to say about his college days.
Enjoying the basketball tonight.
Well, the Canberra Cannons at the moment, while they are in 8th position on the ladder, they have played fewer games than any other team in the competition. Wollongong have played 14. Canberra 5-6 record at the moment. They've just had a woeful run with injuries. You can't help but feel a little sympathetic toward their cause. Of course, Corleone Young was injured in the very first game of the season, playing against Wollongong. Had 11 points, 9 boards in quick time, then wrecked his knee, and we won't see him again until next season, although he is still here with the Cannons. You look over to their bench and you see Mickey Dennis Jr. with his wrist taped as well. Could be an operation coming for him after dunking in practice. Just caught the wrist on the rim. That created some problems for him. They really haven't been able to buy any luck at all at the moment. There is Mickey Dennis Jr. He's from South Dakota. And he too has been impressive in the little that we've been able to see of him this year. Geordie Cullen eventually lost control and then got bowled over by Grant Kruger. I'm sure we haven't heard the last of that individual battle. Here's Glenn Saville penetrating, attracted plenty of attention. Good D from Canberra, though, making this difficult for Wollongong to get an open look. It's Charles Thomas who finds one off the front of the rim, and Dave Thomas has Banks running. Cullen joining in. Likewise, Mick Hill. Back to Banks, who fires over Kruger. It's 3 more, and George Banks now has the best individual quarter going in 2 seasons in the NBL.
And just in case you've joined us late, he's got all of Canberra's points, 21.
Shanahan looking for Saville. It was deflected by Brad Williams, and Canberra have come up with the ball again. They are out hustling the reigning champs at the moment. They lead by 7.
Well, he's only got a minute and a half to go, and he will have all of their points.
Cullen takes it from Thomas, back to Williams. Now they go back to Dave Thomas from close range. Eventually, a second Canberra Cannons player does get on the score sheet.
Well, secretly, I was hoping that nobody else scored. I don't think I've ever seen that anywhere, anytime.
Charles Thomas splitting two defenders. Now Pepper from close range. Took some time to tumble, but eventually he adds another two. Pepper with his first field goal in the match, but it's still a 7-point lead in favour of the Cannons. Less than 60 seconds to play, term number 1. Brad Williams off to Mick Hill, guarded by Shanahan. Here's Dave Thomas, got Pepper in the air and moved past him and helps himself to another two. That's an impressive move from Dave Thomas. Back to a 9-point buffer. Here's Saville in traffic. Eventually gets it to Shanahan. Fans thought he may have travelled in the process. Then Pepper got away with a push there. Dave Thomas and Grant Kruger have drawn the attention of Eddie Crouch, and he's going to call a double
11
foul.
White and 11 red. Double push.
Second personal for Dave Thomas. Kruger picks up his first. Last time Grant Kruger played here, he and Cal Britton exchanged words, and Cal ended up with a technical, but did tell us he felt better afterwards.
Well, let's see where it happens. Watch, it's on the opposite block. Those two guys trying to... Grant Kruger screening him out, and Dave Thomas just threw him off. That's a tough one for Grant Kruger. He's just screening him out.
Right, so we got a double, and we got the one on Pepper.
It does tend to attract so much attention that it's not the first time that we've seen Grant Kruger in a double foul situation where he appeared to be the lesser of the two infringers on that replay there. I'm sure if it wasn't Grant Kruger that was thrown around like that, then perhaps the foul might have been just a single on Dave Thomas. But here come the Cannons nonetheless. Under 30 seconds to play in what has been George Banks's first quarter. Kruger slaps it out of his hands, almost forced him into error. They'll maintain possession with 14 seconds left on the shot clock. 24.7 on the game clock.
Well, Grant's a little more mobile than those big guys that have been trying to guard George Banks. In that possession, he did a good job.
Williams had it slapped out of his hands, and now Matt Campbell is off and running. Grant Kruger took a whack in the eye and is now bleeding severely as well. He'll have to go off. So Grant Kruger's been on the floor for 60 seconds or so, and he is bleeding freely from the eye. An accidental whack in the face there. You see it's the left eye. It looked very nasty indeed. He was clutching it, and as you can see, he knows there's some damage done here because he's going to receive some treatment straight away. May have even been his teammate that caused the elbow there.
I think it was Brad Williams when the ball was knocked away from him. His hand came down and just in that part of your eye right there, that one in right by your eyebrow is a very tender spot. Once you start perspiring, it cuts very easily. We see Luke Doherty, and Luke Doherty hasn't played a whole lot of minutes this year. He hasn't actually hit a field goal the entire season. He's averaging about maybe 3 minutes a game. And we've seen him before Damon Lowry.
Lowry, of course, does have that hamstring problem, and Brendan Joyce did say that he would only be used as an absolute last resort. As Williams fires up a tough shot, no time for Doherty to get one away on the quarter-time buzzer. And against the odds, the Canberra Cannons, their fans will be excited by the quarter-time scoreline. Canberra 25 leads Wollongong 16 here on Fox Sports.